Alright, we see my movie be akwaba. Na me for Mega TV and platform we eso. Yankopon koswa e shraw. Abusia na no ye yanka bi hyemu. Na yeti se Burkina Faso, Neger, eni Mali etimi ayomu ho afiri ECOWAS, Economic West Africa Community Organization no. Omo ayomu ho afiri. Na abusia simple. Say sa my miensa we omudi omo so because a military and a janta in edi omo anim. Na sansem we na uncle Kwesi Pratt Junior edi nsem bia ba abonten. Na utie nsem oka na utimu se bibi ta akire because mpemfo ka se bibi ankoka popa aya na enji prede. In fact bibi eta akire ankasa and bibi eta akire no we are yet to know. What I say, we are yet to know. Intimate person make us abre no. Yebeko. Ni yakwa kuti sa conversation na ekoso. Ewo bra allergy and allergy. Yes na nimbo na o host program no. Abusia yewra owra efen solo movement for change ono so na wo hono bi. Na wo hwe how a conversation no na heated a ano eshi afenso omosan issue omo consent efa Speaker of Parliament suspension odiama 4 members of Parliament Nelson Roxin Echena Dafia Mopo any Frankano Dompre chief of minority whip Edmund PP any the other two bi omo ka ho 1 PP mu a odiama omo suspension ni na yento kwa kesi a ekoso last week. What you say bra na yewra Samuel Okujeto Ablakwa aye radio mu be interview no sorry mu be vet no but ewi achi na chese entimi ankoba so sa entokwa ne de keka ho abusia mempese mekasa bebre yenko na yenkoti sansem no enkomodidi ni emfa embra de koba bidina kai na ebeto aso meso se odi o comment beto comment section nim na wa like dwumadi na wa share na bibi etimi akoso what you say yankopon enkoso enhira yenko na yenkoti nsem no emu enchire mu emfa embra koba bidina kai na ebeto aso ewe yem platform we so yankopon enhira.
Formal withdrawal of the Alliance of Sahel States from the Economic Community of West African States, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, are no longer members of ECOWAS. But ECOWAS says, stick to the agreements we have with them, extend the same courtesies to them for now. Comrade Pratt.
Well, I think it's important, to clearly distill the issue at stake. And for me, the issue at stake is not so much the unity of West African states or the unity of Africa or Pan-Africanism. That's not the issue at stake. The issue at stake are the values, the values that we should uphold as African people and as West African people. That's the issue at stake. So it's important to recognize that there are people who believe in African unity, who are right-wing, rabid pro-imperialists. They believe in African unity. The likes of Senghor and so on. They believe in African unity. And there are those like Padmo, Nkrumah, and others who believe that African unity, Pan-Africanism makes sense only within the context of socialism. Okay. So it's important to recognize these differences over values. Now in ECOWAS, what is at stake now is what values should we uphold as member states of the Economic Community of West African States. There are those heads of states who insist that military regime should be completely outlawed in West Africa. You understand? And there are those heads of states who actually think that military regimes at some point may have some value and so on. So that's the issues in contention now. Now, I'm shocked that ECOWAS would adopt a position of coup leaders bad, so-called democratically elected leaders good. Because if you look at the history of ECOWAS itself, ECOWAS was established at a time when the vast majority of West African leaders were military leaders. ECOWAS is a product of military rule to some extent. Okay. The other issue simply is that there are so-called civilian democratic governments which are far worse in terms of respect for human rights and so on than the military governments. Sure. And then bottom line, what do our people want? Do we just want forms, to chase forms? Or we want to look at content? This argument between form and content is very important. Today, there is no doubt whatsoever, and I have no doubt whatsoever, that if we were to organize elections in West Africa to choose one leader, and you put Ibrahim Traore against any of the West African leaders, he will beat them hands down in any popular elections. I have no doubt at all about that. Okay. So the argument of civilian regimes and military regimes collapses completely. Now, what are West African people looking for? West African people are seeking to assert their sovereignty. And that is why the Sahel states have been described as a backing on a revolution to restore national sovereignty. Okay. So if you take West African states which have foreign military bases, are controlled absolutely by France and Western states and so on, they are not upholding the sovereignty of their countries. And indeed they are an affront to the aspirations of their people. So ask yourself, why is Ibrahim Traore so popular everywhere he goes? Because people identify with him. They see him as a symbol of their aspirations and so on. So it's important to recognize that. Now, a year ago, Niger, for example, was classified as one of the poorest countries, the three poorest countries in the world. Within 1 year, Niger has become the fastest growing economy in the world. That's a huge statement. At the time, Ghana is piling debt after debt after debt. At the time that we are going for, begging for debt relief and so on, look at what is happening in Niger. Should we be condemning Niger, or we should be copying them? Or should we be studying from them? Look at a country like Burkina Faso. Its gross domestic product has grown from 18.4 billion to 22 or 23 billion per annum. They're doing something right. Okay? So this whole argument about coup regimes and non-coup regimes, as far as I'm concerned, is a non-starter. Look, if leaders in West Africa or anywhere in the world use constitutional rule as some kind of a banner under which they misbehave, trample upon the rights of their citizens, change constitutionally imposed term limits, loot the coffers of their states and so on, there will be coup d'etats, and the coup d'etats will be justifiable. No doubt at all. If you do the kinds of things that these West African leaders are doing, there will be coup d'etats that will be justifiable. Okay? So, I agree with my brother here, my brother Suhini, that President John Dramani Mahama has started an initiative which makes a lot of sense. Engagement with them. I think it makes a lot of sense. Now, it's important to recognize that the alliance of Sahel states originally started just as a military alliance. The principle was that if you attack one, you attack all of them and so on. But increasingly, It is going beyond the emergence of a military alliance to an economic bloc and so on, because of the deliberate sabotage of their economies by some of the West African states. And if you take Niger, Niger is unable to export its oil resources to China because of deliberate impediments being put in its way by Talon's regime in Benin. You understand? If you take Ghana, until recently, our president Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo was engaged in open sabotage of the Sahel states. At least we saw him on camera urging Anthony Blinken of the United States of America to provide him with resources and support to subvert Burkina Faso. Why would anybody be in an economic community with you when you are deliberately, publicly and openly plotting their subversion? They wouldn't. Okay? So, like my brother here, I'm hoping that the initiatives which have been taken by President Dramani Mahama will lead to a situation where we'll be able to smoothen the edges, we'll be able to have some kind of a new relationship, if not coming back to ECOWAS, establish some kind of a new relationship with the Alliance of Sahel States. What is significant for me is that the Alliance has decided to uphold the principle of the free movement of goods and services across the sub-region. Okay, which is very important. It's also important that ECOWAS has woken up to the reality that the sanctions against them do not make sense, and it's easing the sanctions and saying that we should continue to cooperate with them and so on. That's fine. I've had the privilege of spending some time in Niger. And you see, those who sit here and condemn coup regimes like my brother Solo do not have any understanding of what is happening on the ground.
What is happening if you can? What is happening with the coup?
The popular mobilization of people did not exist under any civilian administration. I've seen popular mobilization of people. I've seen citizens in their communities pouring out in the streets at night and keeping vigil to protect, the regime and their country. The expulsion of the French military from Niger was done by the population and so on. You understand? And this insistence on reinstating Bazoum and so on is so stupid, it's unbelievable. Bazoum, he can't govern Niger for 24 hours. He's so unpopular.
But he was voted for.
Solo?
Yeah.
I'm happy that this is coming from you.
Yes.
Because you know Ghanaian elections. You've participated in it.
Yes.
And I've heard you make statements at the quality of elections.
Yes.
The fact that somebody gets voted for does not mean that democracy has been enshrined. Papa Dog and Baby Dog, were they not voted for?
He voted for.
So don't make that argument. It's a very bad argument to make. It's an extremely bad argument to make. Okay? Nyasimbe Yadima.
Yes.
Was he not voted for?
He was voted for.
Ufe Boayi, was he not voted for?
He was voted for.
Alassane Ouattara, was he not voted for?
He was voted for.
So don't make that argument again.
So you support coup d'etat?
I don't support...
But that is the position now.
No. I don't support coup d'etats as an absolute. But I'm saying that when leaders misbehave and make it impossible for people to express themselves democratically, and make it impossible for people to take their destiny into their own hands, coup d'etats would occur as a natural consequence of the foolishness of our leaders. And when they occur, it is not in our duty to condemn them. It's in our duty to assist in the process of creating a mass-based, democratic base for the governance of our societies. That's what I'm saying.
Thank you.
No, but I need a clarity here, please. So, it's very important, you see, that when a coup d'etat takes place, under the circumstances you have described, and say there has to be a democratic base, how do we ensure that democratic base with a coup leader, a military leader? No, it's very important.
Solo.
I don't have it.
No, Solo, you are making You see, you're making the mistake of dwelling on form rather than on substance.
No, you see,
please, can I finish?
Let him.
You're making a mistake of dwelling on form rather than on substance. That's your problem.
So
that's your problem.
okay.
Today, I can say with all honesty that if you are looking for countries which are upholding democratic ethos in West Africa, you would not count La Côte d'Ivoire amongst them, even though their leader was voted for. If you are looking for countries that are upholding the democratic ethos in West Africa, I will count Burkina Faso. Because I'm not looking at form. Here is a regime which is making conscious efforts to make sure that the resources of Burkina Faso are owned by the Burkinabe people and are exploited for the benefit of the Burkinabe people. What is more democratic than that? Here is the government which is making sure that no foreign power, however strong, dictates to it, and that it pursues the aspirations of its people. What is more democratic than that? So don't let us look at form, let us look at substance.
Thank you very much. A few comments that are being shared on this on Facebook. Efo Kujo Edem says, please, frankly speaking, I support the military regimes going on in Niger, Mali, and other military rulers in Africa because they are making serious changes in their countries. So I support Mr. Pratt. There's also Jonathan Dokken who says, the fact is that most of our leaders have for a very long time hidden behind ECOWAS to serve their personal interests than that of the various nations they lead. What we should pay attention to is that some of these military leaders are not ruling to the admiration of their citizens by bringing real development. That's Burkina Faso. Look at the applause he is receiving among all the lots of democratic leaders at GM's inauguration. This should be a signal to ECOWAS and our so-called democratic leaders. Jonathan Dokken, who sent that from Akachi. Peter Doji says, one serious thing Mahama and the administration must know is that those leaders are not, they will never come back to the so-called ECOWAS. And anyone who proposes that will be cut off immediately. And they must understand that. That's interesting. Peter Kofi Samuel says, are the democratic countries better than the military countries? In any case, ECOWAS was formed in 1972, during which time military men were in the helms of affairs. So what are all these noise about? If civilian democracy were doing well, why would the military take over? Peter Doji against Burkina Faso in 2 years is having over 100 tons of gold reserve. How many tons of gold reserve does Ghana have? A few more comments on this. In fact, Samuel Appiah says, Basolo, I don't think ECOWAS can issue an embargo to Ghana and Burkina. Ghana has not decided to stop trading with Burkina. There's Charles Graham who says, Mr. Solo, please leave our Sahelian leaders to act in their own interest. Today's Chinese economic miracle emanated from a military regime, as Rwanda too. So there's no merit in a so-called Western democracy delivering tangible results. In any case, where else has the democracy worked, apart from the Northern Hemisphere? Mr. Osu, does the U.S. populace even freely elect both its president and vice president? Those are just some of the comments that are coming in on the discussion. This one just comes from Samba Damo, who says, for the first time in history, Comoros President Azali Assoumani was in Ghana together with GM just to establish Comoro Embassy in Accra. Zachary Abdo Momo said, well done, Uncle Kwesi. I wish Uncle Kwesi can. What does this have to do with the discussion? Well, thank you. The discussion over what transpired in Parliament, and the Speaker issued specific directives. I'm sure you have by now seen the video in circulation. This is the, especially at the vetting committee. I mean, people turning over tables, people attempting to do that, others stopping them from doing it, the distraction of the mics, all in pursuant, this is a protest against a continuation of the vetting on the day in question. The minority says they agreed on 4, and then they made room for 1 more, which was 5. Then they were being forced to do an extra 2. So the majority told them that if you won't do, go, we'll continue. They said no, there will be no vetting today as far as they are concerned. And that was how it all started. Well, this is the speaker. A very lengthy statement, but these are the directives it issued. First, in the circumstance of the absence of a Privileges and Immunity Committee, a 7-member special committee shall be constituted under Orders 5 and 20 Rule 4 to conduct a full-scale investigation into the events of. The committee shall identify all members involved in the disorder and submit its report with findings and recommendations within 10 days from today. Any member found culpable shall face the appropriate disciplinary measures as prescribed by the Constitution 1992, the Parliament Act of 1965, and the Standing Orders of Parliament. The following members shall constitute the membership of the Special Committee. The committee is led by Honorable Emmanuel Bejra, so a 7-member committee has been formed. Then he continues to say, in pursuance of Section 10 of the Parliamentary Service Act 1993, Act 460, I direct the clerk to Parliament to cause to be undertaken a full assessment of all damage caused within the committee room and parliamentary precincts as a result of the misconduct of the members. Not a single peso of public funds shall be used to repair or replace any damaged property. Instead, members found responsible shall be surcharged for the full cost of repairs and replacement, with deductions made from their emoluments, including the salaries of members if necessary. Then it continues, in pursuance of the provisions of Constitution 1992 and Standing Orders of Parliament, I further direct the clerk to formally lodge a complaint with the Ghana Police Service to conduct a full criminal investigation into the matter for appropriate action. Further, I call for an immediate meeting of the Committee of Selection to reconstitute the Appointment Committee as a matter of urgency and to set up the Standing Orders Committee to reconsider a revision of the rules for the assessment of nominees for the consideration and approval of the House. He went ahead to also suspend a few. So they said, consequently, the following members are suspended from the sittings of Parliament for 2 weeks from yesterday. They are Mr. Roxy Nelson Eche Kwame Dafamekpo, Majority Whip; Frank Anodompre, Minority Whip; Alassane Suleiman Tampoli, and Mr. Jerry Ahmed Shaib. In the meantime, a deputy whip from each side of the political divide are hereby directed to act in their stead. Those are the directives the Speaker has issued. So we'll be talking about that, and I once again start with Hamza on this issue.
Sana, when it comes to the conduct of Parliament, it once again reflects the nature of our institutions and how, as a result of our democratic practice, people who are not in actual sense qualified in any serious jurisdiction to be lawmakers of a country find themselves through the process in Ghana specifically. I say so because sometimes if you look at the conduct of our MPs, you begin to wonder whether as a country we do the needed due diligence in presenting candidates, that is as political parties, to be elected as members of Parliament in our country. Because you see, I have always said that in a democracy, we can all make reference to the constitutional architecture that creates the state institutions, but its form is theoretical. When you come to the real practical leg of democracy, you simply cannot downplay the significance of Parliament as an institution. And so it presupposes that in determining who goes into Parliament, we must put vested interest in that regard and ensure that that institution is not open to all kinds of people to enter. If you get that place wrong, these are some of the issues you are likely to encounter. And if you look at the major political parties today, access to even contest as a parliamentary candidate is largely dependent on your resource strength. It has nothing to do with your capabilities. It has nothing to do with your disposition as a responsible person in society. It is largely rooted in your resource capabilities and to some extent your political network within that political organization. These are the issues. So you simply cannot help but produce ambassadors of your country, because every member of parliament is not just the foreign minister. Every member of parliament of this country is an ambassador of the republic, whether locally or internationally. And so their conduct must be in sync with our objectives as a country. Because you see, the more they denigrate themselves and demonstrate to the Ghanaian public that they are incompetent to occupy those roles, the larger the implications internationally on us all. So we must find a way of sieving our parliamentary candidates before they get into parliament. Because that conduct that day was not just an indictment on those MPs and the individual people who engaged in it. It was an indictment on the institution of parliament, and to a very large extent internationally, an indictment on our country. Because it will tell how the international community will take us. It's part of our image. And as a people, we must be interested in electing responsible parliamentarians into parliament. I saw the conduct of another prayer, largely influenced by the current minority leader, Afenyo Marking, clearly unparliamentary. If anybody had done so, they, the very people, would have been before parliament calling for them to face the privileges committee. And I've always maintained that the privileges committee is being used as a backing dog against Ghanaians, not against members of parliament. And it's being used as a punitive measure only. But what they fail to understand is that those privileges are not designed only for their benefit as members of parliament. It is designed for the protection and sanctity of the institution of parliament created by the aspirations of the Ghanaian people. And so even in conducting themselves in parliament, due regard must be had to that. And some of these occurrences, I know this is not the first time, but we are developing, we must be making progress as a republic. There must be genuine efforts on the parts of our lawmakers to demonstrate responsibility to the many youth out there who look up to them for leadership. And so for me, I think that the political parties must begin to tighten their selection process when it comes to members of parliament, so that we can work together in the collective interest of this country to protect the sanctity of our institutions and not to open the floodgates for all manner of characters to have access, largely because of how deep their pockets are or how well connected they are politically. These things must be checked. Again, now coming back to the substance of the Speaker's declaration, I have a problem. Respected legal luminary, a veteran parliamentarian, and so very conversant with the rules of parliament. But you see, there are some initial questions I may want to pose. Per what you have just read, I understand that the Speaker has ordered the formation of a committee to look into the disturbances that occurred. So on what basis did the Speaker then proceed, before even the committee starts work? On what basis did the Speaker proceed to suspend this for? Look, I'm a member of the National Democratic Congress, a proud member at that. I should be out there hailing the Speaker, especially considering the fact that the Speaker is one of the people who have mentored me in this game back as far as when I was even in University of Ghana first year. Took me as a son. But you see, if we are not careful as a political party, we would end up opening ourselves up for attacks, and by so doing we would end up losing the goodwill of the Ghanaian people. And these are some of the petty mistakes we can make, which would open us up to such attacks. So for me, I want to understand the basis of the suspension. On what investigation? What was the investigation that resulted in that? You see, we must respect our institutions and follow due process. Because if it was done in another administration, I'm sure that would have been asking those questions. I sincerely agree with the speaker that people should be punished. They should be suspended. But if you have set up a committee to look into the matter, you simply do not jump the gun by proceeding to mete out punishment even before the committee starts work. This is a bit problematic for me. And for those who may want to take the National Democratic Congress to the cleaners, that is an easy bite for them to take. Because whichever way you look at it, the speaker is a member of the National Democratic Congress. And so his actions have consequences on the entirety of the government. So for me, I would appeal to the speaker to once again look at his own orders and see how those things can be corrected. Let the committee go ahead with their work, come out with their findings, and based on the findings, sanctions can be meted out to those found culpable. And again, another leg of his order, which I agree with, apart from the fact that people should be made to pay for the destruction of state properties, here the MPs, I also fully subscribe with his direction that the CID department of the police service must investigate what occurred. Because you see, it's a criminal conduct. And when it comes to state property, irrespective of your standard, even if you are the president of the republic, if you are engaged in damaging state property, that is a criminal offense in our law books. So they should not just be made to compensate for the destruction. We expect punitive sanctions that would deter others, because you see, they have the financial muscle to do so. And in the next year or two, they can go on that spree again. But we need punitive measures that are such that they can actually prevent such future occurrences from happening. But when it comes to the conduct of our MPs, my own senior brother is one. And I'm making reference to the Honorable Minister. He says he doesn't like Honorable Senior Comrade, Minister for Employment. You see? Environment. Yes, when it comes to, and in all honesty, that is why I have never had the motivation to go pick a form to contest as a member of parliament. That's why I've never had the motivation. Because we must lead this life based on principles. There are so many people I would not be proud to share parliamentary seats with, because I know a number of them. And if truly our task is to fashion out laws and ensure accountability of the executive, there are many of them in there who simply do not understand that basic realities or responsibilities entrusted on them. They have just found their ways there through their political associations, like I indicated earlier, or how deep their pockets are. And so, if you mean well for this country, there will be that reluctance. And the problem is not just the MPs. Even the people who elect them are here. I'm making reference to the citizens. Because what would be the essence of pretending to represent people who do not actually even understand the mandate they are giving you as a member of parliament? So you go out there, you promise heaven on earth, because they simply do not have an iota of understanding of the responsibilities of a member of parliament. They vote you and you go into parliament, and the next day you wake up in your house. There are people out there who are demanding you to pay school fees. They are demanding for you to do their outdoorings for them, perform funerals. I do not have the heart to endure that, in all honesty. In all honesty, I do not. All my student life, I have contested for for student leadership positions, because I knew at the student level that I was dealing with people who understood to a very large extent the mandate they were giving me. And so I've always been motivated. From my training college, when I trained as a teacher, to my university days, and even my postgraduate studies, I've always been interested in student leadership positions, because there I can be rest assured of accountability and the appreciation of the mandate that people are giving me. Unfortunately, these basic principles are lacking. The motivation today is simply to have access to your share of state resources as a member of parliament. That is the unfortunate reality. And if you are confident in yourself that even without such access, you can still be a productive member of society and you can achieve greatness for yourself, trust me, your interest in going into that house would be waned. Because we must have virtues. One must stand for something in society. And that is lacking. And that brings me back finally to the nature of our political parties elsewhere. And that is not to say that that is the best practice. Elsewhere, the political parties have standing working committees. So you have the educational committee, you have the finance committee. So if after university I decide that I'm not going to go to the private sector and I'm not going to pick up job within the public sector, I apply to join the National Democratic Congress. I'm assigned to a committee of my interest. I begin to learn about the rudiments of that sector of our economy or of our nation. If I'm interested in the security committee of a political party that I'm a member of, I get employed, I start working within that architecture. I start serving people even when they come for meetings to an extent that I'm co-opted as a member of the committee. Then I begin to have an understanding of that sector of our country before I even get the opportunity in the future maybe to be appointed as a minister or deputy minister in that sector. Today, what do we see? People are appointed from parliament to parliamentary positions, to executive positions, largely because of their constituencies. Not based on any substantive merit in terms of what they are going to do. And you expect development? You simply will not get it. You won't see any real change. And so, this cycle of having to go to the polls every 4 years, anticipating realistic change, would continue to be an illusion. So we must begin to have a rethink when it comes to our political architecture. The political parties must take these things seriously. Ethics should be the foundation of every political grouping. People must have ethics. They must have values. It is not the case in our country today. It is not the case in our country today. That is not to say that you simply cannot point to 1 or 2, 3 people and say that these people stand tall when it comes to issues of integrity. Yes, there are a number of them in parliament that we can make reference to. But you see, irrespective of their efforts, there are many of their colleagues in there who make us question the continued relevance of that institution. And to a very large extent, even the continued relevance of the current stature of political parties we have in the country. So, Senna, we should not just be concentrating on the effects. Oh, there was distraction in parliament spearheaded by MPs. We have to go back to the root cause. And we must hold the political parties responsible. We must see realistic change in their operations. We must demand it. So if there's going to be sanctions, the political parties themselves must share in that sanctions the speaker is talking about. It should not just end with punitive measures meted out to those identified MPs. There must be a cost element associated with it so that the political parties can bear. If they feel the heat, they will also raise their standard when it comes to their selection process for parliament. I think that we deserve that. That is the least we deserve as a republic. And so the time has come for us to call on them as political leaders and as political parties to signal a desire to change. Look, we were part of this change crusade in terms of the election of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama and the NDC, because we believe that His Excellency and Mahama and the NDC administration can really bring change. So we will not sit aback and engage in the usual political praise singing for his administration to make the same mistakes Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo made. And I said it, that in as much as I'm a bit reluctant when it comes to ethnic references, but especially for those of us coming from the northern sector, the least we expect is his success, because we know that it would have a bearing on us if he fails to deliver. And that is why we are enjoined to call on him to deliver, not just as President of the Republic, but also as leader of the National Democratic Congress, in bringing these needed reforms, at least so that the MPP can also follow suit and make our institutions more reliable. So if the speaker's finding exposes misconduct on the part of NDC MPs, they must be penalized. And His Excellency President Mahama should not end there. He must ensure that the party itself finds a way of holding them accountable. That is what the reset agenda is about. Where there need be for us to start it at home, we must. When it comes to the conduct of the, especially now that we are in government, we have a bigger, what's the name? We bear the brunt. I've always said that Ghanaians are expecting us to turn around the economy. And sometimes that's why when I hear people condemn the leaders in parliament in terms of their stance and beginning to say that the NDC bench side is now weak, I laugh, because we understand the responsibility that has been entrusted on us. Our economy is in shambles. There is the need for us to redeem that. We are dealing with foreign partners. If we give them the slightest indication that the minority, because of their numbers, their views don't matter, what simply we are telling our foreign partners is that issues of accountability will be on the back burner. And so they should shy away from bringing their investments into the country. And we are in dire need of FDIs as far as the state of this economy is concerned, if we are to create jobs and revive certain state institutions. So we cannot be seen giving that indication to our international partners that because of their small numbers, they do not matter. So sometimes our leaders are forced to endure them, largely because of imaging. It doesn't mean that we are weak. This is the same parliament that succeeded in shutting down parliament for close to a month, even in the face of Supreme Court order, to protect excesses in an election year expenditure. So what makes you think that today, majority of those MPs who are back in parliament cannot stand up to the NPP, now that even their numbers are 80? Because we bear the brunt of responsibility now, and we must demonstrate it. So, Senator, Speaker must have a rule look of the orders, especially the issue about the constitution of the Appointments Committee. It's needless. You don't need to reconstitute the Appointments Committee. And so for me, when I heard the order, I was a bit uncomfortable in that regard too. Because it has been created. It just happens that per the standing orders of the House, the minority and majority chief whip are members of the committee. But if in their absence, if a quorum is formed, the committee can still proceed to do business. So there is no need for such an order to have the committee reconstituted.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. A few comments are coming in very fast. Let me go to Facebook once again. That's Alasan Uzaligo, who says, good morning. He's watching us live inside Tamale. Can the NDC move without this micro-minority? The same issue as Hamza was trying to address. As Ghanaians didn't just hand over power to NDC on a silver platter, they should know that. There's an alamni or that Elamte says, focusing on our mental health is perhaps the most powerful step one can take to improve our overall quality of life. Mental health check is very important. Ghana doesn't take mental health serious. Emmanuel Boyko says, Ghanaians, when you allow money to lead you, you end up voting for empty-headed students, criminals, thieves, rooks, and useless and silly people to lead you. Yes, because the one who has money is the one who will lead you. So if your leader is a fool, but because he has money, so who will lead you? There's Mohammed Misbahuddin, who says, the chaos that happened on Wednesday night, Afenyamakins must be blamed. Charles Graham, can such a shameful and childish comedy ever occur in China? There's Francis Gordon, who is also joining us. What happened on Thursday at the vetting was very disgusting. Members of parliament were behaving like WWE artists, using tables and chairs as a defense mechanism, bringing total chaos. It is a shame to Ghana and should be condemned at all costs. Members of parliament should show maturity in everything that they do in the interest of Ghana. I'll answer again. Okay, I think it's a repetition of comments he sent earlier. Goy says, when an incident happened, you first suspend those involved for investigations to start. So What's he talking about? He disagrees with a lawyer. There's Abdul Ghaffar Mohammed. We are watching every single thing happening there. 4 years is just around the corner. No Ghanaian is foolish. They should write their exams. We will mark them. Destroying public property at the expense of an ordinary Ghanaian. Our eyes on every single person. If someone calls them indisciplined lawmakers, they quickly say it's contempt of parliament and you shall face the privileges committee. It's sent down from Tamale Gumani. There's Alfred Kuku Sesena. The Honorable Speaker should have added Afenjomaki to those he suspended because he failed as the minority leader to control his side in a committee. Secondly, this unacceptable act happened in his presence. There's Neil Ate who says, this gentleman has spoken my mind and I salute him. Sam Hammond, as of now, I'm at a loss as to what he's driving and defending lawlessness. There's Isaac Asase AEC. Okay, noted. Zachary Abdul.
Alright, so Meka, the decision to take yourself from a economic West Africa countries, community, and so organization. Abusia, that wasn't a bad decision because say Burkina, Mali, Niger, especially Ufa Burkina, how say the population no, and I say omo economy, how faster it is growing. In fact, a mind busting. Yes, a mind busting, and I don't understand. So almost to say almost made your so almost to say almost depending on any African country, especially West Africa. Na omobetimi abo omobra. I know there, I see nothing with it. I see nothing wrong with it. So mbetimi ati omo. Inti sa ensem na nkofo keka na omati omo na omo afri ECOWAS omo no. You know, this is the time I will say Africans, we need to take a bold step and a very brilliant decision. We have to take it because we say sanko for your matio mohi or the BRICS, the big alliance. Neto in the kika. I am very sure sanko for binum eshe omochi and amomo take their decision. And these are the countries John the NATO no United States, I think say China can home and big countries, you see join your more although but they make sure Ukraine ebe develop it. For example, Russia and then Russia abwa Burkina Faso amomuma develop it anameboa. Is it Niger or Burkina Faso? I stand to be corrected. So me, I feel so more kasa enim the more mumai and they are a sovereign country. They are a sovereign country. They are a republic. Just because as you see, they are led by a military junta, and so mo feel is a bebuomwa. Then that is their decision. Yes, that is their decision. And that conversation, in fact, for now, no, your money hangi na DBC. Yura Afeyo Markins, any MPP, ade omo ye no. In fact, they are creating something now. Amomo, I don't know. They are creating something now. More opposition, and it is very sad. Say at this time no, Enkadia was so multimi yedi Ghana for a chopper. They have to come on board and apologize every single platform being and Kaya chopper they show a sign of remorse. Nanka Ghana for who say nkofo ya yeto beti omu omo asesa in the next election yen consider omo hwade. But it is like the arrogance and pride that led to the defeat, or the loss, is still there, and nothing has changed. And even this time around, they want to try and sabotage government business. Ghana for etimia kwako yi omu leader John Dramani Mahama no omu pese omu san sabotage no na na dwumadi enko nani. This idea and this MPP for you, it won't survive. In fact, so they should stop it. They should stop it. Abusiya ma minfa wonsi. Make sure to subscribe to my channel na wa like dwumadi na wa share. Ma me che ba for United States of America yankopon hira me ma me. Edi obi bia ahwe Mega TV. Abusiya yankopon enhira wo. Abusiya yankopon enyo kese. Manya emergency so ma minfa wonsi. Fa comment to mo. Like dwumadi na share na fofo. Enya bi hweti we ensema etim ebeto dwa. Makro bibia. Bye bye.